I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln-Lancaster County Planning Commission of September 21st, 2022. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, is available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. If you parked in the parking lot across the street to the north, the gate is open and no parking coupons are needed. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. The Planning Commission action today is final on the following items. 1.1, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22016. 1.3C, Special Permit 22031, 1.5, Special Permit 04041A, 1.6, Special Permit 22030, and 5.1B, Special Permit 22015. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held September 7th, 2022.
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
Thank you. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items into the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
The first item on the consent agenda is item 1.1, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22016, to review as to conformance with the 2050 Lincoln-Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan, adding a new urban development housing enhancement project to the CIP Capital Improvement Program. The Planning Commission action is final unless appealed to the Lincoln City Council. Next item, 1.2, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22017, to declare surplus city-owned property generally located at North 70th Street and Colfax Avenue. Next item, 1.3A, Annexation 22011, to annex approximately 16.62 acres, more or less, associated with item 1.3B, change of zone 22027 from AG Agricultural District to R3 Residential District, and associated 1.3C Special Permit 22031 for the Stevens Creek Villas First Edition CUP Community Unit Plan for up to 116 dwelling units with associated waivers to the zoning ordinance and design standards. All of these are on property generally located at 9305 Adams Street, and the Planning Commission action is final on this special permit. You should have also received a staff memo dated September 19th identifying revisions to the conditions of approval for this special permit. Next item is 1.4A, Annexation 22010, to annex approximately 7.02 acres, more or less, on property generally located at Northwest 18th Street and West Beartooth Drive, associated with item 1.4B, change of zone 22026 from AG Agricultural District to R3 Residential District on property generally located at Northwest 18th Street and West Beartooth Drive. Next item is 1.5, County Special Permit 04041A for an amendment to an existing CUP Community Unit Plan to add one lot on property generally located at Northwest 27th Street and West Mill Road. This action is also final. Next item is 1.6, special permit 22030 to allow for an expansion of non-conforming and non-standard uses to add a front entry on property generally located at 6250 South 112th Street. The Planning Commission action is final on this item. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
No.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items?
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on any of the items on the consent agenda?
Yeah, Jim Paulton, and we would like to speak on 1.3A, 1.3B, and 1.3C.
1.3A, B, and C. Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on an item on the consent agenda? So we will then remove items 1.3A, 1.3B, and 1.3C and have a separate public hearing. Is there a motion for the remaining items on the consent agenda?
So moved to approve.
Is there?
Second, Rodenberg.
Okay. Shelley?
Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Motion approved, 5-0.
I will now ask Shelley to call the requests for deferral.
We did receive written communication on behalf of the applicant requesting the agenda item 5.2, special permit 21037 for the West Van Dorn CUP Community Unit Plan for up to 10 dwelling units with associated waivers on property generally located at Southwest 70th Street and West Van Dorn Street for this item to be placed on hold until further notice.
So moved to defer.
Second?
Rodenberg.
Okay. Shelley?
Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on special permit 21037 today?
I just wanted to give you a quick update because we did have Danae Kalkowski, Seacrest and Kalkowski Law Firm representing the developer 1640 LLC. We did have a neighbor come and speak, 2 weeks ago at the Planning Commission. I did want to let you know we did get in contact with him, sent him a copy of the grading and the drainage plan so he was able to have that information. And then we did let him know that we were placing this on pending for now and that we'd get back in touch with him when we're ready to move forward. So thanks for your patience. We're just working on some adjustments to the site plan that we'd rather have worked out before we come in front of you.
Excellent. Thanks, Danae.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else here who might wish to speak on special permit 21037? Okay. We will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to that testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and or included as part of the record, please provide that information to the clerk for distribution. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The timer will go off after 4 minutes, then you will have 1 minute to wrap up your testimony. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the Commission votes to defer action or continue the hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
The first public hearing items are going to be for items 1.3A, 1.3B, 1.3C that are being pulled from the consent. So annexation 22011, change of zone 22027, and special permit 22031. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these applications?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned by visiting these sites to be disclosed?
I don't see any. Hi, Ben.
Good afternoon. Ben Callahan with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street, 68508. Let's see. Items 1.3A through C were combined application. This is for the annexation and change of zone, roughly 16.6 acres. Is also associated with the special permit to allow a community unit plan. Shown here just south of Adams Street and west of North 98th Street. Currently, the city limits exist to the north and to the west of the property, allowing for annexation. The applicant is requesting community unit plan to go from AG to R3 single family and allow up to 116 dwelling units. At the time, they're proposing 51 on the site. I'll zoom in a little bit here on, as you can see, the site has extensive floodplain on the property. So really the north area of the site is what can be developed. Pretty much the whole south side will have to be outlots shown for future flood and drainage areas. On the east side here would be one lot, and then another lot on the west side for a single family home. And right now on the lot 2, they're showing 5 units that would have multifamily. Currently, this does comply with the comprehensive plan. It shows as future urban residential at this area, and the developer has been working to work with LTU as well to add turn lanes and some additional changes to the access for the driveway to the single family home. Abby?
Single family home shown on this map?
The outline is not shown, but it would be, lot 1 would be to the west here, so it could be anywhere on the...
On the site plan.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
It says that it's for up to 116 dwelling units, but looking at this site and given the limitations, and the fact that the way it's laid out currently with 51 units, I'm curious how you could ever fit 116 dwelling units on this site.
Correct, and that would be more on the flexibility and matching the CUP density that we have within the code. So that's taking the whole acreage of the site into accountability for density, but generally the south side, as we said, would not be developing with the floodplain. So this would be possibly in the future if they were to come back and maybe change the layout. They could go up to 116 just following the general zoning code.
So they'd have basically the same footprint and they'd go up. It'd be a question of whether they could build or have more dwelling units really going up instead of, in any kind of other place on this particular site.
Yeah, they'd have to go up, but they would still be limited to 35 feet for R3.
Okay.
Benny, is it correct that the area south of the floodplain on this property could be developed?
The area to the south is actually, so that'd be still in the county, so not be in city limits, and those would be acreage properties today.
Got it.
Okay. Other questions for Ben? Thank you. Testimony from the applicant.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Eckert with Civil Design Group, 8535 Executive Woods Drive, Suite 200. Here today representing 9305 LLC, the owners of this property. This has been another one that's kind of been a long journey in front of the planning department to try to figure out what could be a reasonable use for this piece. And so we've gone through several iterations. And yeah, as you can see on the site plan, it is very constricted by the floodplain and floodway. I want to put up this exhibit, and it's 11 by 17, so it's going to be a little difficult for me to get most of it up here. But I drew in a very thick black line there for your reference that is a combination of either the limits of the floodplain or the limits of the required bed and bank setback. The bed and bank setback from the creek sometimes exceeds the floodplain. And so you can see that over on this end, we develop a little more area, but that's where we're going to have our detention cell. And then on this other end, this is the area that we think is probably the most feasible area for one single-family home to be built because of the bed and bank setbacks here. And so, so we went through various iterations of what we thought we could do and continued discussions with planning. Planning basically said we will support an R3 zoning here and a CUP, which allows 6.96 units per acre. On 16 acres would be the 116 acres that are in the use permit. But the reality is that we feel what's represented here is probably what we're going to do. We looked at a taller building, but we have such limited space, we'd have to go to underground parking, and we were just concerned about water table issues. And this developer recently did this product right across the street next to Prairie Village North and has decided that's what they want to do. They've engaged the architects, they've engaged us on final design, and so they feel like they've got that building figured out and just want to repeat it over here on the south side of the street. So we'll be coming off of 94th, which is a private drive aisle, not a true street, if you will, which is acceptable. And we've worked with staff. We will have to add turn lanes coming from the east and coming from the west for the site. We've worked out some details. We also worked out some details that was in the memo that you got, addressing a couple different things that were initially in the staff report that they want to remove or adjust. So we're in total support of that and all the staff conditions. And I think the important thing to see here too, in terms of we did have a neighborhood meeting, and I've also had phone conversations with the gentleman that asked for it to come off consent, and he told me he'd be here today to do that. And it was primarily attended with our neighbors from the south and our neighbor over here to the east. And I think it was good for them to see this map with the aerial and realize that everything south of that black line is an area that can't even be graded. You know, it's really off limits. We're going to have a series of retaining walls around some of the buildings and the drive aisles, but all the trees stay. Yes, there are some trees that are removed in this area for the buildings, but they're not near as thick as the area. The NRD, we also are working with the NRD. They have some access easements into the property to control and fix some control structures, some check dams that are in various places, and which does include some of our neighbors to the south have the easement on them. So we're going to be in front of the NRD board to adjust those to give them a little different access off of our drive and some access off of this drive. They now take direct access off of Adams. LTU wanted to have them come off of our driveways or come interior once we get the connection made. And so Paul Zillig and the NRD, I think are going to be fine with that. We got to go through a subcommittee with them and then their full board to adjust those easements. And, you know, in the discussion with the neighbors, the traffic, primarily the traffic, what's going on for them on 98th Street is a gravel road. And with the development of Waterford and Dominion and Prairie Village North here north, 98th gets a lot of traffic. And I think they all understood that wasn't our problem per se, that's a community problem. You know, we did a traffic analysis for the turn lane lengths for LTU. I think we generate 21 AM hour peak trips and 27 PM hour peak trips. I mean, we're at the equivalent of 3 units per acre density for this entire project. So we're not even meeting the comprehensive plan goal of density, but, and I told them that this developer for these 50 units will write a check to the city for $90,000 for the arterial street impact fee. And it is the city and the city's discretion on how they use that money. And I was speaking with Pam Dingman earlier, and I think she's going to talk a little bit about that segment of 98th Street when she's up here later. So, but LTU feels, you know, this is not an issue with Adams for sure. The developer will put in turn lanes that, you know, will probably exceed a $200,000 cost to meet the safety standards and the minimum lengths for the turn lanes. Again, we've gone to great lengths to avoid those areas that are protected by code. And feel like this is a good project for this site that was fairly unusual, but would generate some density and revenue for the city. So with that, be happy to answer any questions you have.
Mike, can you point out where the driveway will be and then how that would get to the
Sure.
single family, where that part of the conversation?
Sure. So you can see it
Yep.
right here, coming off and down. We're gonna adjust that. We're gonna have to come down here below these garages.
Okay.
And come back up, and work with the NRD on a special radius, a bigger radius, because right now they just have pickup trucks going in doing inspections. But if there's ever a point they have to bring in bigger trucks with riprap, they want it
Got
a
it.
little. So it will be, that's why there was a waiver to potentially put part of it in the front yard setback, because the bed and bank setback is really tight here. So, but it would come like this and then go over to that.
Got it.
Single family home, and then the NRD would share that. Now, if that is a home isn't built for 10 years, the NRD will just come in and we'll have a curb cut for them, and they'll just go over the grass and like they do today.
Understood. Questions for Mike? Thank you. Okay. Popping back and forth here. At this point, is there any testimony in support of these items? Any neutral testimony or testimony in opposition? Come on in. And if you can state your name and your address for the record, that'd be great.
Sure. Jim Pelton. I live at 2725 North 98th on our nice dusty road out to the east of town. I appreciate the opportunity to talk. And I've talked with Mike, and we had a nice conversation. But we do own one of the properties to the south, directly of where the project will be. And we've been out there for 30 plus years, so aging out there and growing and stuff. And as we were looking at what was going to occur, it just seems kind of out of character for that area to kind of have that one strip of high density housing when the whole rest of that area is the low density housing. I had a couple of concerns. I talked with Mike about these too, but there's a kind of a creek or a drainage area that kind of meanders along between the property on Adams and then down into the acreage properties. And so we have a little bit of land on the north side of that, and they've got a little bit of land on the south side of that. And it's like, how would that fit into everything? You know, that piece that's on the south side, I think we had talked about, and not just dealing with Mike and the current developer, but what about the future? Would anybody ever want to take that piece of land and build a bridge to it and build something there? Because that would really then, I think, interrupt the integrity of the whole area. I'd made some notes and I left them at work when I came down. So I think those were kind of the main things that we wanted to bring up, just to note that there is some opposition from the local area there. And again, it sort of doesn't seem to fit in real well. I know too, one thing, and Mike had said that maybe that could be changed too, was, it does say 116. That's a lot, in that small area, if you've been out there and seen that area. I think it would help us all if that was changed to 51, which is what I think is being applied for, just to, kind of set the ground for the future. It'd be harder for somebody to come in then and change that. So I guess those are really the only things that I had to say.
Any questions?
Or do you have any relief from their indication that they will not be doing anything with the south piece?
Yeah, I think that gives us some relief. It would be nice if it was a more solid, Mike's word, I'll take that. But what about who comes next? That's the concern that we would have.
And that would have to be a totally separate hearing.
Would that need to be? Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know, another thing too that we thought about was, the way that creek meanders, and I don't know what that involves. I'm sure that's a whole different thing, but adjusting the property line to follow that creek rather than the straight lines that are there now. So that would, I think, make everybody feel better too.
Other questions? Thank you for your time.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other testimony in opposition? Questions for staff? Mike, I do have one follow-up, if you want to.
And I can kind of explain graphically to
That's
Jim's.
exactly what I was hoping for.
Okay. So, yeah, there's a kind of an odd situation on the property in that, yeah, Jim's house is right here. And the floodplain actually comes up right here. So this is what he's referring to is both for him and his neighbor, there's a parcel here that is outside of the floodplain that's not planned to be developed. But he has a valid point that maybe somebody could do that someday. However, with we have both floodplain and floodway here. And so in that area, the floodway is from here to here. And so under the current standards, and I saw Tim Zock here earlier, you know, we would have to basically clear span that entire stretch with a bridge to get, you know, maybe 4 or 5 units. And so we would, it just wouldn't be economically feasible. And as you said, Commissioner Campbell, it'll be platted into an outlot, and any change to that would have to go through an amendment process for the use permit. And so that's all being shown as an unbuildable outlot as part of this project. And so,
Knowing what the cost of bridges are from our own work, I don't think it's financially feasible to develop that south piece.
and I commend staff and LTU for looking at it, that, you know, in a typical project like this, they would have us extending at least a road clear to the south, which is probably what these folks wouldn't want either necessarily, although they may like that and they would get them off of 98th, but the cost with the width of the floodway in this area is even thicker. So that's where that parcel's at. We would have to change the plan to show it as a developable lot and
Because right now it's shown as an outlot.
an outlot, correct. And then in terms of, yeah, the creek does meander down here and up here and goes like this. And so adjusting the lot lines can be done. It would require a final plat. But it does get pretty complicated if people have mortgages on their house and other elements there. So, so I don't know, personally, I don't feel like that's needed, primarily because this is a unique area where, as Ben showed, the NRD, and I can put that up for you here, has these dark check patterns are all either access easements. They're mainly access easements to get to their drainage control structures here, 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 and here. And so in terms of proactive maintenance of a drainage way, this is in a very fortunate position. The NRD's been in there, they've done the work, they're monitoring it every year, they're fixing it to try to keep the incision of that channel from getting any worse. You know, I think it's probably just best to leave the property lines as is. You know, we even acknowledge that some of the neighbors kind of have free reign on that piece. Our neighbor to the east acknowledged he kind of has taken some liberties over here in this corner. But I think we leave the lots as is. And so the last thing I would say is, you know, Ben and I talked a little bit about this density. We really don't see this plan changing. But we wanted to have that opportunity. If it did, that's a significant item to the commissioners. I think we could talk about a reduction, you know, maybe in the 60 to 70 unit range, just in case we're able to get a longer building on the final design or change something. We feel like this is the maximum we can do. And like I said earlier, he wants to do this. It's a 2-story product. Our grades come down off of Adams to where these buildings will be set down about 4 to 5 feet. But I would be open, and I've talked with our client, to an amendment to reduce the unused density on the property to some other number, to allow us to have a total of maybe between 60 and 70 units, because that's really the only thing I think we're going to gain at this point when we get into final design is maybe that 4-plex at the end, we can stretch it out to an 11-plex. But it's, with most projects, when you're this tight and you have a parking ratio requirement of 2 to 1 and you want to meet that, it's difficult. But I don't feel that we need to have that total density out there if you guys feel that's important.
Thank
Okay.
you. Other questions for Mike?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I would move to close the public hearing.
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Hearing closed.
I would move to approve, and somebody give me the number because I am not flipping back fast enough.
1.3A annexation 22011.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll open it up and we can discuss all three and then we can kind of move forward from there.
I'm very comfortable with the fact of it being an outlot, because if somebody wanted to change that, they'd have to come back through the planning commission, and we could deal more with the neighbors' concerns in as much as that would be closer to them at that point. I personally don't see that ever happening because of the cost of building a bridge that long would offset any income they would receive from that 6-plex, 4-plex, 11-plex, whatever it is. It just doesn't financially work. So I, in my own opinion, feel that that will never happen, and that we will be well protected on the neighbors to the south.
Other discussion?
I am in support of the annexation and change of zone without any additional things. I do think it is worth a discussion about the density number, just given the size of the lot and the fact that the applicant has indicated a willingness to consider that. So I think that's something we should discuss when we get to 1.3C. But in terms of A and B, I'll be in support of both of those.
Yeah. I agree. Certainly the annexation makes sense, given where it's located in proximity to the rest of the city limits. Change of zone to R3 residential is also in keeping with the zoning in the area. With regard to the special permit, I think that this is a good project, a challenging project, given the nature of the space and the natural boundaries that are in place, and given that it might provide the neighborhood with some assurances with regard to density, I think it's worth considering whether we reduce that 116 number, especially given that it's likely going to be significantly lower than that, and that can just provide that assurance. Understood that there would be concerns when you're building housing like this close to acreages, but it is in keeping with things that are happening in other areas of our community. It's an opportunity to increase the density of housing in this particular area, and it certainly fits with our comprehensive plan. So as a whole, I think that this is a good project, but I'd love to discuss a little bit more the density. I think we can have that discussion, and then we can continue forward with our voting if we want to do that.
So do you want to talk about an amendment?
Yes.
I'd be happy to add an amendment on 1.3C when we get to it.
Okay.
To limit it to 70
Okay.
units.
It seems like 70 might be the right number. Certainly the developer indicated that that would be in keeping with how their plans could change, but still and providing some assurance to the neighborhood that it certainly would never go beyond that, but will likely be limited to the 51 that's been presented. Any other thoughts?
Oh, I'm in agreement as well, especially given the developer has been willing to make that change.
Great. Okay, Shelley, if you want to call the vote on 1.3A, and we'll go from there.
All right, Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
And I would move that we change zone 22027.
Is there a second?
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
And I would move that we amend special permit 22031 to limit for up to 70 dwelling units.
So we would approve special permit 22031 with an amendment that it could be up to 70 dwelling units with associated waivers.
Correct.
Second, Ryman Yost.
Is that, Shelley? You can call the vote?
All right, Ball,
This is on the amendment, right?
I think we can do it all as one
One
in this
amendment.
instance.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's just one motion with an amendment.
Got it.
correct. Okay.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Excellent. Thank you.
Next public hearing item is item 4.1, Comprehensive Plan Amendment 22005 to amend the 2050 Lincoln Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan to add the Comprehensive Watershed Master Plan. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this item?
No. Gentlemen.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Tim Zock with Transportation and Utilities, Watershed Management Division, 555 South 10th Street. And I have Mark Lindeman here with Lower Platte South NRD. And we have a quick presentation here to go through, and then we'll answer some questions. And I guess first, before we get into that, I'll let Mark just give you a little bit update on the NRD board.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Mark Lenneman, District Engineer, Lower Platte South NRD. Glad I brought my email along. It's 3125 Portia Street. As I mentioned, I'm the new engineer. I've only been there for a few months, so this is
Welcome.
all new experience for me. I'm just here as a representative from the NRD. We've been working with the city since 2000 on these watershed master plans, and we've been alongside them partnering together, and we're here to just provide our support for this comprehensive master plan. And I mentioned last week, the board of directors voted on it unanimously to approve it as well.
Super. Thank you.
All right, well, I have a quick presentation to get into here. Yeah, so this is our Lincoln Comprehensive Watershed Master Plan, partner with the NRD and the city, and we had JEO Consulting Group was the engineer that was hired to do this study. So real quick, I'm going to go through kind of why we are doing master planning, the history of past master plans that we've done, this comprehensive watershed master plan, and the tasks that we went to with this plan, the project prioritization, which was a main component of this, and then the proposed projects. So real quick, just to give you a little bit kind of background, like I think in the 1980s, 1990s, there were, as the city was growing, they were starting to see issues with development and flooding, erosion, stream stability, water quality. And so the city at that time decided that they needed to start kind of master planning and looking at how can we address these issues now, how can we kind of address future issues as the city grows. And so Beal Slough was kind of one of the areas where the city was seeing a lot of growth, and that was the first master plan. And so the city and the NRD partnered in starting this master planning effort, going watershed by watershed, to really be proactive, to get out ahead of the issues, to be able to know what the issues are in the watershed, and then have a plan moving forward to know how to prioritize and how to plan out funding and do projects to address these issues. And the three main focus areas are, flood risk reduction, stream stability, and water quality. And so here are the list of the 14 watersheds that the city has studied. This area in yellow in the map is kind of the boundary of what we've studied, starting in 2000 with Beale Slough, Southeast Upper Salt Creek, and then wrapping up in 2018 with Lynn Creek, North Salt Creek, and Oak Creek. And as part of this process, the city and the NRD hired a consultant, and they went out there, they walked all of the creeks, all these open drainage ways to see what are the issues with stream stability. They did floodplain modeling to looking at what are the flooding issues. They took water quality samples and kind of looked at what are some of the water quality issues. And each master plan kind of focused on different issues, kind of based on if it was urban area versus more rural, and if there was already kind of a built-out environment with flood risk already or water quality issues. And with these 14 master plans, there was 209 capital improvement projects that came out of these plans. So the comprehensive watershed master plan is taking all 14 of these and consolidating them into one plan. There wasn't really any much field work. We weren't studying any new areas or coming up with new projects. We were really compiling all the current projects that we have into one plan. So the top 4 on this list are kind of the main tasks that we focused on. We reviewed past data from the 14 master plans. We looked to compile all the completed projects that the city and the NRD have done in the last 20 plus years. We looked to update the project prioritization criteria and have a consistent scoring for all the projects. And then we had an updated project list so that we can plan our future projects. And then the bottom 4 are some other tasks that we looked at as the city, as we manage our watershed. We don't look at just projects, but we have other programs and practices that we do. So we looked at an urban drainage study, which is looking at our closed system and coming up with a process for that. We looked at the minimum flood corridor, and we had, with a previous study, we had looked at how can we simplify that criteria. So this master plan kind of mapped that out so we as a city and property owners can see like what that new criteria would look like. We also had some guidance on how to other practices to stabilize our streams and creeks and open drainage ways with grade controls and try to prevent erosion. And then we also looked at how can this master planning effort that we do, how can the city get credit for that in our community rating system program? So that's our program with FEMA where we receive points for different floodplain management practices that we do. And then FEMA kind of scores us, and for more points that we get, the reduction in flood insurance premiums are seen for our community. So kind of the first thing was we looked at the projects that have been completed in the last 20 plus years. We've completed 60 projects, and here's kind of the mix of stream stability, flood control, and water quality. And these are in 2021 dollars. And I just wanted to get just so you guys have an idea, here's some examples of projects that we have done. So for a flood risk reduction project, in 2011, we completed a project along Beale Slough, right around the state penitentiary and 14th Street to widen the channel. We stabilized the channel. The bridge was replaced, and so that provided some flood risk reduction to the state penitentiary as well as some businesses in that area. More recently, we completed an example here is a stream stability project. We completed this one along Salt Creek at Old Cheney, and the goal there was not only to protect the bridge at Old Cheney, but also to stabilize the entirety of Salt Creek and that reach through Wilderness Park as it's continuing to erode and degrade. This helps protect that Salt Creek. We see erosion kind of starts to work its way up. So it would start in Salt Creek and then it works its way up to other tributaries. And so protecting it at Salt Creek provides a global benefit. And then an example of a water quality project. In 2016, we completed a project at the Lincoln Children's Zoo. We added bioretention cells, permeable pavers, and some other kind of example water quality BMPs. This is a great one because it's right there for a lot of people to see. This plaza area in the wintertime, the snow melts right away because of the permeable pavers. We just want to give you guys a nice visual of the types of projects that we have done and the ones that are being proposed.
Can you go back one picture?
Yeah.
Why is the riprap on the one side and not on the other?
A good question. Partially it's to protect Old Cheney's on that side.
Okay.
And there's a sewer line with a big sewer siphon. So it's partially to protect the infrastructure. That's, I think, the main reason. And the city kind of leaves the rest of Wilderness Park alone, and we kind of let it do its natural process of the banks will slough off. And
Right.
so kind of focusing our money on protecting our infrastructure.
Got it. Thank
And
you.
you can see right kind of in the middle, there's a grade control going across the channel, and that helps protect it from continuing to downcut in size.
Thanks.
Yeah, not a problem.
Probably the biggest project would be the Antelope Valley, which I know the NRD was instrumental in.
Yeah.
Is that part of?
I don't believe that came out of the master plan as a project, but that's another, the Dead Man's Run flood control project is an example of one that came directly out of the master plans that we're doing. But yeah, that's a really good example of a really large flood control project that's benefited the city. So what we really, one of the most important things with this effort was to get a consistent prioritization scoring for our projects. You know, these master plans have been done kind of in silos for the last 20 years, and the prioritization methodology wasn't initiated until 2006. So there was a couple of master plans done prior to that. So we wanted to relook at that prioritization, see are there any improvements we wanted to do to it. And so we had there was city and NRD input, there was the engineers looked at kind of how we've selected projects and used that to inform the prioritization. And then we also had a technical advisory committee that provided some feedback on what to include in the prioritization. So we updated that, and then we applied that to all of the projects. And so we have now 106 proposed projects. You'll see we started with 209. There were 60 completed, 106 proposed. There were about 40 that were removed due to kind of over the last years, the city and the NRD finding that maybe they were infeasible, or there were property owners that didn't want the project and the project was on private property, or just kind of found that as we've gone through projects, like there are ones that just aren't practical anymore. So this is kind of the bulk of this is these projects. And we have on our website at lincoln.ne.gov/watershed master plan, we have a really nice interactive report, kind of the summary of the report you can go through. And with that is this map of the projects. And so you can click on a project here, you can sort it by the type of project, as well as completed, current, and proposed. So this is a nice educational tool for our community, as well as a planning tool for the city and the NRD, where we have all of our projects in one place. And if you click on a project, you'll get a nice project sheet that gives you a description of what the project is, estimated cost, as well as for completed projects, it'll show information on that completed project. So that's all I have right now, and I'll answer any questions that you guys may have.
It certainly makes sense that having that opportunity to compare and contrast and prioritize all the projects together, and by having it in one plan, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Questions? Yeah, thank you. The presentation was great. Very, very comprehensive.
Thank you.
So I guess we have to actually go through the whole thing, right? Where am I? So that was a testimony from the applicant. Is there any testimony in support of this application? Is there any neutral testimony or testimony in opposition?
I'd move to close the public hearing.
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Hearing closed, 5-0.
And I would move to approve Comprehensive Plan Amendment 22005.
Is there a second?
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley? Oh, sorry. Discussion. Yes. I'm just jumping ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really appreciate the process that you went through, the thoroughness. I like, from a planning commission standpoint, having all of it in one master plan as opposed to a variety of separate ones. And I think the tools that you've created online are excellent because we consistently hear concerns from community members about flood control, drainage, and so this is, I think, a really good tool for people to have access to, and clearly water quality is important to all of us. So I just want to thank you for all of your work, and I think this is a really great plan.
And I also totally agree, but am pleased that there is a prioritization to it also, because that allows the public as well as anybody who wants to have more knowledge to understand what the ranking of the projects are, when a project might come forward, and whether it's cleared out on the list or up. So I think it's a job well done.
I agree. Thank you. It just enhances the transparency. It ensures that our government and what we're doing is accountable to the community. And I did have the opportunity to kind of get on the website and look around, and it is pretty neat to be able to go into those particular projects and get that comprehensive update all in one place. Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved, 5-0.
Thank you.
Next item for public hearing is item 4.2, Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22015, to review the proposed 1 and 6 year Lancaster County Road and Bridge Construction Program, fiscal year 2022 and 2023 through 2028, as to conformance with the 2050 Lincoln Lancaster County Comprehensive Plan. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this item?
I don't see any. Pam?
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. I did switch computers out, so I just wanted to make sure that you guys can see my presentation.
While we're waiting, congratulations on your award.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Rumor has it 8th time is the charm. So, I'm extraordinarily honored to have been shortlisted 8 times. So now I'm a little disappointed because that's 8 free lunches, and now I'm out. I'm Pam Dingman. For those of you who may not know me, I am the Lancaster County engineer. This is my 8th presentation to the planning board over the years about the county's 1 and 6 road and bridge program. Any of you are welcome to contact me if you ever have any questions about the things that go on in county engineering. For example, citizens that come up and talk about dust on 98th Street, which is in my jurisdiction, or anything else. Larry Legg is also in the audience today. Larry is. I'll point him out. He is the assistant county engineer if I'm not available. And Monet is also in the audience today. And so the 3 of us would be happy to answer any questions that you ever have about Lancaster County engineering. Lancaster County has 293 bridges or bridge length box culverts. We have 45 miles of road that are still dirt. That means they've never been graded. They don't have any materials on them. We have over 1,000 miles of gravel roads, and we have 284 miles of paved roads in Lancaster County. We also have approximately 1,000 box culverts that span under 20 feet, because if they span over 20 feet, they're considered a bridge, and 6,900 pipe culverts, including driveway culverts. Our operations consist of storage locations for our materials at 8 different places, and we have 13 buildings around the county, as well as an abandoned rock quarry where we store a lot of our stuff. In addition to that, we repair all county vehicles. 70% of the work that we do in our mechanic shop is for other departments and other agencies. And we also supply, we serve as the gas station for all of the county. Just a quick note, since I'm at after all, Planning Commission, right? We now maintain over 2,700 residential lots. Those are the acreage lots that are out in the county. About 20 years ago, the county commissioners made the decision to start having Lancaster County maintain subdivisions, and subdivisions could apply for maintenance. What's interesting about that is there was never any funding to go along with that, and now we're 20 years down the road, and we're finding that these subdivisions are extraordinarily maintenance intensive without any true revenue source to pay for them. So that will be something that we'll continue to talk about in the future, and the long-term sustainability of that. That really led us to do something that we don't see government agencies do very often, but because of the increased maintenance in Lancaster County from the subdivisions, we did add 4 FTEs, or a grading crew, last year. Our maintenance request for general maintenance, the wait on that list had reached 30 months. And by the time you wait 30 months for infrastructure maintenance, you have a much bigger problem than you had the 2.5 years before. We're hoping to get down to a 12 or 13 month waiting period with this. It doesn't solve our problem, but it helps us get a lot closer to it. Some of the challenges we faced during the current and last budget year is we continue to have ongoing road closures due to the Lincoln South Beltway construction. The detours are constantly shifting, and we also have had a number of roads that have been damaged from the detour traffic. We also have extreme supply chain and labor shortages that continue to drive up our project cost. Hey, if you know anyone who wants to work at county engineering, we have about 8 to 10 positions open at any given time. I do have concerns going into the winter about taking care of the snow and the winter workload. We also have concerns about needing a dust control plan. You just saw a resident step up and talk about concerns about dust in Lancaster County. And then, of course, construction inflation is at a near all-time high, with many items being 22% more. That's an average number. Things like steel pipe are 300% more. So things, fertilizer, those type of things are much more than that 20% or that 22%. I've talked a lot over my tenure about the damage in flooding for Lancaster County. And the reason is as we continue to try to stabilize the roads and bridges in Lancaster County, twice, 2015 and 2019, we've really had to reset that entire process. So we now have finally reached the point where we are equivalent to where we were in 2018, prior to the 2019 storms. So all the work we've done, and we're now even, so we haven't lost ground, and hopefully we can stay on that path. My staff always says don't mention the flood word, Pam, but it does happen. Last year I said it was my Christmas goal to have less than 10 bridges closed around Lancaster County. We made that goal, and we very quickly slipped back over that line. And so we do currently have 12 bridges in Lancaster County. They're closed. 2 of those bridges are currently in design. 2 of those bridges are in construction or will be in construction soon. 2 of the bridges are designed, permitted, waiting for funding. And by the way, these are the same 2 bridges that I talked to you about last year. So once again, we did not get funding to build those. So they remain on our closed list, and we hope we get funding for it. The Federal Highway Administration has changed the way that we approach bridges, and we used to have a sufficiency rating and some other tools. We now have a rating that is called good, fair, poor. We have 27 bridges in Lancaster County that are rated poor. That means that rather than repair them, they should be replaced. However, when you look at that fair number and you look at that big number in the middle, 147 bridges, we also have a number of bridges that they might be fair right now, but they're in danger of falling to poor, and the Federal Highway Administration has recognized that too. Current bridge needs, we have 26 that are structurally deficient, 4 that are functionally obsolete. That means they're not wide enough or built sturdy enough to pass the trucks that they need to be able to pass. We have 30 that are scour susceptible. That means that they have an erosion control problem adjacent to them, similar to what was just talked about with the last presentation. And then we have 11 that are scour critical. That number is down significantly over the last 4 years. We have been replacing those scour critical bridges or repairing them to get them off of this list. And again, of course, we have 27 that are poor. I've said this many times when I've come to this group. We rate fourth as far as counties with the most closed bridges in the state of Nebraska. We really wouldn't find this acceptable in any other quadrant of our government, except for somehow it's become acceptable in engineering. Just a quick note of bridges that we were able to repair and were completely replace in FY 2022. R210 down in the south quadrant of the county, R248 in the south quadrant of the county. These are interesting bridges. There was actually 3 bridges where the individuals left their life estate when they died to the county engineer's office to replace bridges in their township. And so it was sad to me to have to close their bridges. There were actually 3 bridges, and I just closed the last one here a few weeks ago. And here we are kind of in the same place again, just 50 years later. And of course, Bridge Y181, and that was a WPA era bridge. And then we did also get replaced Bridge M164 last year. It was in the northwest quadrant of Lancaster County. This was the largest box culvert we had built to date. I had said we weren't probably going to go bigger than that, but we are. And I'll talk about that again in a minute. If you get up to the north end of the county on Agnew Road, there are several bridges that were built in the 1950s by the Defense Department to convey the intercontinental ballistic missiles to the missile silos. These were great bridges, and when I first went out and looked at this bridge on Agnew Road, I was like, holy moly, this thing is overbuilt. This was a great bridge until the flood of 2015. You can see that we did numerous projects to it to try to stabilize the banks of it. I joked in my office that the problem with this bridge was it was 100 feet too short, and Mr. Legg in the back of the room is happy to tell you that it's only 90 feet too short. Little engineering humor amongst friends, right? We are in the process of replacing this bridge. We do think we're going to be able to open it a couple weeks early. Hoping that we don't start getting blitzed by rain because we've had a great construction season, although it's been a little warm. But this will be the largest bridge that has been constructed in my tenure at Lancaster County. We've also implemented a comprehensive bridge repair program. I think it's really important that we start taking care of the things we have to extend the life of these bridges as long as possible. So there were several bridges in this last year that we did maintenance to, erosion control, which you guys probably hear a lot about, but also some structural stability, some deck rehab, and some shotcrete projects, which have become a standard for my department. We are currently in the planning process for Bridge F201. That is very close, painfully close to the city limits, up on Arbor Road and North 27th Street. You may recall that I did have a discussion with the Planning Commission and City Council a couple of years ago about this bridge. We have put it in to get MPO funding at an 80-20 split with Lancaster County in order to start the engineering on this bridge to replace it. It is an older bridge, it is in poor condition, and it is important to get this bridge replaced, not only for Lancaster County, but for the city of Lincoln. Other bridges that we are currently in the process of replacing, Bridge S180 and Bridge R184. These are both on Roca Road. We replaced S179 2 years ago after the flood. 3 bridges, all built in the same year by a federal aid project in the 1950s. I would have really expected S180 to fail sooner than its sister bridge, S179. However, it did make it until recently here. These are going to be not bridges anymore, but very large box culverts. There'll be a quad, a 4-box, 12 by 12 box culvert, so 48 feet in span for both of these. and we are excited to get these going. Roca Road is currently closed due to S-180, and it does affect our residents. And then Bridge E38, hey, we'd hope to replace that as a box culvert. It's not a box culvert. I don't always win that. It's definitely a bridge. E38 is just south of Malcolm. It's just south of town, and it's in between the wastewater treatment plant and the ball fields for the city of Malcolm. So that has obviously created a huge issue for the village of Malcolm, for their ball fields and for their commerce back and forth to their wastewater treatment plant. Here is a slide of the proposed bridge projects for the out years. I think it's important to note on this slide, as you look at the standby projects, we did submit, in fact, we were the only county in the state that submitted a grant proposal to the Federal Highway Administration for the BIP. That's right, the Bridge Investment Program. We submitted that a few weeks ago. We won't hear back until March, but we wanted to put that on our standby list for bridges should we receive that grant. And that grant would be really a game changer for Lancaster County and bridges. We did put several of our very large bridges on that. Sometimes the smaller ones are easier to pick off the system and replace than the bigger ones, and so this would be great to be able to get these structures replaced. I want to talk a little bit about pavement needs. I always have sympathy and compassion for the couples, like the couple that was here talking about 98th Street and the dust. Hey, we know 98th Street in that area has a lot of traffic on it. We actually have 19 miles of road that have more than 300 vehicles a day. We know at 300 vehicles a day, a gravel road is about impossible to maintain. And so we need to go out there and really aggressively start picking these off the system and getting these paved, and because our traffic keeps growing in Lancaster County. We've continued to go out and get our traffic counts this year. I expect to have an updated map in the next couple weeks of our traffic counts and what that looks like. Due to COVID and some other things, we were a little behind in getting those counts done the last couple years, and it will be nice to get them updated. I want to talk a little bit about Saltillo Road. Talked a lot about it for 7 years now. It is a federal aid project. It's highway safety improvement funds, or highway safety improvement program. This project is a 90-10 share, so the county will only pay 90% of it. It's looking like we'll have construction in 2025. And whenever I say that, I always say, you know, we're going through the federal process, so we could always get snagged in that. That will be a very important project in the future for the county and the city. Other pavement projects we're looking at are South 68th Street from Firth Road to Stagecoach Road. This is a combination of highway safety funds as well as MPO funds. This will be the largest federal aid project Lancaster County has ever completed. We are well into the design of it. It will be somewhere around the range of $10.8 million of federal funding with a 20% local match. Also, Fletcher Avenue has been put on the federal aid project list. It is an 80-20 share. This would connect Waverly at 148th Street all the way over to 84th Street. It's a critical farm to market route, but Waverly also has an issue, and that's that currently truck traffic that tries to bypass Highway 6 goes through on Amberley Road, which the city of Waverly has built 3 schools on. And so my own son years ago was hit in a crosswalk on his bicycle, and we do need to fix that and try to get that truck traffic away from the school traffic. In addition to that, we have Northwest 56th Street, which from I-80 to West Holdridge Street, the commission may recognize that as it's adjacent to the new high school. We did put that in for MPO funds at 80-20% federal aid. And so we're excited. This project will benefit the city of Lincoln and Lancaster County. And I think it's great that we have finally reached an agreement where we can move forward and work on these projects on the fringe, on the developing fringe of the city together. 98th Street, right, the famous street. 2 federal aid projects. We are coordinating heavily for these 2 projects with the city of Lincoln. And so some of the costs will be shared with the city of Lincoln. There are also MPO funds as well as Lancaster County funds in this project. We'll be looking at A to O This has pushed out a little further, probably like 2026, due to some environmental concerns in the corridor since the road isn't open. And we're hoping that we can keep moving with this one, because I'll mention this about this stretch. We have an agreement with the adjacent landowners. The city of Lincoln and Lancaster County purchased the right-of-way for the road to go through about 8 years ago. And the agreement says if we don't build the road by 2030, the ground reverts back to the adjacent property owners. So we need to get that road in. Other pavement projects are 98th Street from Old Cheney all the way up to A Street. The portion that has been annexed into the city will pay for that portion. We are also working with the city and developers for the roundabout and some turn lanes at Rattlesnake Drive, which I know that you guys have talked about here at the Planning Commission. I think it's best for us to integrate as many of these improvements in one project as we can, although it does not make the project simpler for us. Other pavement projects, we do plan on paving Southwest 14th Street next year. If you look at a map of Southwest 14th Street, it's not paved between Bennett Road and Highway 33. Paving this 2 miles will get us so that we're paved from Sprague Road all the way north into the city of Lincoln. It's also a game changer for people who live in the area. Right now, people kind of race through that 2 miles of gravel, and it does have a very high traffic volume on it, and it creates some dangerous conditions. And then the couple that was here earlier was happy to hear that we are planning on grading North 98th Street, Adams to Holdridge next summer. And then hopefully we will get additional funding to pave it the year after. There will be no federal funds involved in this project because it has some issues that would make it very difficult for it to be funded through that mechanism. Projects that we worked on or in progress for FY22, we're working on about 11 miles of pavement for engineering. We have 1 mile of new pavement that was southwest 42nd Street, adjacent to the Monolith plant. That was an economic development grant, and then the state paid for the first $500,000 of that, and Monolith and the county split the remainder. And so that was a very good deal for the citizens of Lancaster County. We did 4 miles of second stage pavement and 20 miles of chip seal. I just want to bring up this note. We rate all of our pavement on a 100-point scale, and it's determined to need maintenance if it has less than 80. When I started talking to you about this number 7 years ago, we had 90 to 95 miles that needed maintenance right away. And I often joke with people that no engineer ever receives an award for things like paving maintenance. You know, engineers get awards for new bridges and new roads, and it's kind of sad because a lot of thought has gone into this program and these programs by my staff. We're now in the 30s, so we've reduced that by 2/3. What does that mean? That means that there's a lot less funding that has to go into paving maintenance, and more money can go into new roads and bridges. My staff, they always remind me that, hey, if we get a really bad winter, Pam, or a super, super hot summer like this last one, we could need a little more paving maintenance than we've expected. Just a little bit about what next year looks like. We'll continue on with that 12 miles of engineering that we're working on. We have 15 miles of chip seal we're gonna do. We are doing currently some emergency repairs to 98th Street down by Yankee Hill. That there was a detour by the South Beltway that put a lot of truck traffic on a really hot day on one of our slabs of asphalt, and it just couldn't stand the truck traffic. We'll continue to do pavement preservation as needed, and we will continue to put the emphasis on maintaining what we have. Just a quick slide on what it looks like for us over the next few years. There's been a lot of years that I've come to you and I've said, hey, we have no pavement. In fact, the mile of Southwest 42nd Street is really the only thing we've paved in the last 3 years in Lancaster County. As we look forward at the next 5, you're going to see this list of projects that I've talked to you about, and then you may note the bottom number in gray, and I know this was in your packet too, of approximately $41 million of federal aid to Lancaster County. It's taken us a long time to get there, and a lot of engineering arguments and cost-benefit analysis and tenacity to stay on it. But this is a game changer for all of Lancaster County. We'll continue to aggressively maintain our roads and our bridges in Lancaster County because I think that's really important. I think it's also important to note that between 2016 and 2022, we've actually replaced 29 bridges with box culverts. And this next year, we're going to do another 2 or 3 of those. But you may note that I keep talking about this 20 or 25 bridges that are bad, and we replace 20 or 25, and we have 20 or 25 more. And so hopefully we can get down to where we maybe just have 5 that are bad, but I might need a few more years to get there. We did a complete inventory of our roads last year with our interns and attached it to our GIS system. That has worked very well for us. I'll note this year that the interns used the program again, and in about 87, 90 hours, we were able to get a complete video inventory of all of our roads and bridges in Lancaster County. This is just a quick, we do have a Lancaster County TikTok where I talk about, we're doing our bad bridge tour currently, and we talk about different road maintenance programs. So if you want to refer to our Facebook, that also runs the TikTok videos, or if you're a TikTok person, feel free to jump on there and take a look. We did have our TikTok on land survey, which I don't know, Mr. Campbell, I would think might not be the most exciting topic in the world. But it went viral. I think it has over somewhere around 200,000 views right now. So you never know where you're going to hit that viral moment when you're hitting social media. Here's all of our social media accounts. Please follow us. We do also push all of our road closures up there and any emergency actions that we need to take. It's a really great way to get to the public quickly. And just a message from me. It's truly an honor to serve as Lancaster County Engineer. I really can't believe it's already been 8 years. It went pretty fast. I'm so thankful every day for the people in Lancaster County Engineering. I know that I'm the face, but there's 100 or more people behind me every day really working to make these roads and bridges and better and safer for the public. So with that, I will just ask if you have any questions about the 1 and 6 road program.
Thank you. Questions for Pam?
I just wanted to let you know that what we had in our packet was very comprehensive and very helpful.
Thank you.
Agreed. Any other questions for Pam right now? Thank you so much. Appreciate the comprehensive presentation. So that was the testimony, staff applicant testimony. Is there any testimony in support of this, of the Lancaster County Road and Bridge Construction Program? Testimony in support. Is there any neutral or testimony in opposition? Any other staff questions?
Nope.
Okay.
I would move to close the public hearing.
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley?
Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Edgerton?
Yes.
Hearing closed.
And I would move to approve Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22015.
Second, Rodenberg.
Discussion.
Since Pam has gotten here, there has been greater emphasis on our roads and bridges and all of that. And so I applaud her for the leadership she's given the department. And obviously, it's a never-ending job. 19 floods didn't help any because that scoured a lot of bridges and added a lot to the list. So I think she's being as aggressive as she can be with the dollars that are available.
Right.
And I agree with Commissioner Campbell, as well as the variety of areas that need to be supported along with the bridges. So definitely commend the work being done in all areas.
I appreciate the annual opportunity we have to hear from Ms. Dingman and really bringing to light the role that engineering plays in our in making our streets safe and ensuring that our communities can continue to grow and that our residents can have great opportunities for transportation. And this always brings it home. I appreciate her thorough presentation as well as her tenacity. With that, Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved 5-0.
Thank you.
The next items for continued public hearing and administrative action are items 5.1A, change of zone 22013 from AG Agricultural District to R3 Residential District on property generally located at 8451 Eagle Crest Road. Associated with item 5.1B, special permit 22015 to approve the Peregrine Townhome CUP Community Unit Plan with up to 29 dwelling units with associated waivers on property generally located at 8451 Eagle Crest Road. This is final action on this item. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these applications?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of the site to be disclosed?
No. George?
Thank you. George Wesselhoff, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska. So the change of zone area here includes the full property of the church, 20.83 acres, and the change of zone again is from AG, agricultural, to R3, residential. And this is to allow for the related special permit, which we'll get to momentarily on the south 5.17 acres of the property. The adjacent subdivisions include a mixture of acreage subdivisions and newer subdivisions established with city services. The adjacent zoning pattern is thus a similar mixture of AGR and R3, but the general pattern is R3 or urban residential with the city services and city development. So the special permit again is on the south 5.17 acres of this property. And we're generally located east of 84th Street, south of Holdridge. And so the request is to have a community unit plan with 28 units requested. The remainder of the church property to the north would be shown as conceptual in the plan. They did ask for 5 waivers associated with the CUP initially. 2 of those are no longer needed. The 2 that are no longer needed pertain to a reduced rear yard setback and then a minimum lot area reduction. And those were previously requested when the stormwater detention area was included within the boundary of the CUP, which is no longer the case, as I'll get to momentarily. So those are no longer justified. The other waivers pertain to sanitary sewer and water main location and sanitary sewer running opposite the grade. They're generally justifiable. LTU does need a little more information on the plan sheets for the water and sewer locations. So this item has been deferred, as you know, several times, primarily due to stormwater management planning issues. And the site plan has been totally revised. All the prior iterations had stormwater management done on site. This proposal includes off-site drainage now through the church property, which I'll show the site plan here. So this is the site plan. The off-site direction for the storm drainage will go to the northeast. In the northwest part of the adjoining development, the 8801 development, there's a stormwater facility. And so that's the intent, to drain to the northeast through the church property and to connect with the 8801 development to the east. And this concept is acceptable, subject to LTU watershed corrections, as well as executed agreement documents. from the church and the 8801 development, both those entities, and that will be required as part of the final approved plan. And we do have, if there are detailed questions on the stormwater, we do have Tim Zock here from LTU Watershed who can answer any of those questions. The final point that I'd like to mention, I know there were concerns related to traffic and street connectivity. This is just kind of an aerial of the general vicinity. These acreage lots are Sunrise Estates. This is the church property, the total property wherein a special permit is located here on the south side. And so we have a history of connections from Sunrise Estates into other developments, including Waterford Estates to the east and south, Sunrise Hills, First Edition to the west towards 84th Street, and then more recently, two connections from Sunrise Estates, the acreage subdivision, to the 8801 development, which included apartments as well as townhomes. So there's a history, there's a pattern of connectivity. The only two remaining points where there's not connections yet to Sunrise Estates are the 93rd Street, which would connect to Southeast Community College property, and then this connection of 88th Street to the south side of Peregrine Townhomes special permit. So that is typical to have these points of connection. As far as the intensity or the traffic impact, with the 8801 development, that was approved for over 700 dwelling units. There was a traffic impact study or traffic study associated with that. In this case, they're requesting 28 dwelling units. So it's not the same for these developments of single family attached and detached. Traffic studies are not commonly required. So there's nothing exceptional in that regard. It's common through other areas of the city. So with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Questions for George?
George, the planning department's recommendation then is to go ahead and connect 88th Street?
Correct, yes.
Additional questions? We received a letter that talked a little bit about drainage to the west and northwest of this property. And you were just talking about how the executed agreements will really are involving properties that are to the north and northeast, the 8801 as well as the church property. Is this similar to the issue, or is this a difference because of how everything's been changed as a result of figuring this out?
I might let LTU Watershed speak to the details, but I know they looked at this site holistically. And then as far as the detention, the reference to the northeast was for the detention facility.
Okay. So the detention is to the northeast, but since you're here, Tim, if you could comment on any concerns about drainage that might be happening to the west and to the northwest?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the exact, letter that was submitted, but we will be requiring that any point where drainage leaves the site, they will have to make sure it's not increased from the existing condition. So the way they do that is either they put a detention pond there, or they change the grading and reduce the amount of area that goes that way. So you could have, say, say there's 5 acres and it's grass. If you reduce that down to an acre or 2 and it's pavement and homes, that may also reduce the amount of runoff that goes that way. So that will be a requirement that they have to show and make sure that they're not increasing runoff at any point leaving the site.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sure the engineer can touch a little bit more on that, on how they're
Sure.
doing it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Very helpful. Other questions? Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Testimony from the applicant?
Good afternoon, Nate Burnett with Rig Engineering, 601 Old Cheney Road, Suite A. It's been a long time coming, and appreciate everyone's patience here as we've navigated through some of this. So I just want to thank George and the planning department and Tim as well. The church has been also great to work with. They provided a letter of support here. Just wanted to show that to you guys that we do have that letter of support, obviously, from the church. So again, George did a great job with the presentation. We're submitting a change of zone request from AG to R3, as well as the associated CUP. We have in the report, it talks about roughly 5 units per acre. The density for R3 zoning can go up to 6.96 units per acre. So the actual density could be 36. We're requesting 28 single-family attached units. It was brought up in one of the previous hearings where we weren't here to present regarding a neighborhood meeting. There was a neighborhood meeting February 12th at the church. Emails were sent out, invitations were sent out, roughly 30 people showed up. So I guess I did want to speak specifically that has happened. Mitch, the client here, reached out again this week to the neighbors that have provided concerns regarding drainage and connectivity, reached out yesterday as well. So I guess just real quick, kind of wanted to go through the submittal process to maybe just talk through any questions that had maybe come up because of all the deferrals. So this was the original submittal for the May Planning Commission. It was submitted on April 27th of 2022. It involved 26 lots. So all the lots on the south side of Peregrine were going to just sheet flow to the south. We had proposed a detention cell in the northeast corner that was going to drain north. We had a retaining wall, and there was some concerns with watershed management. So we had revised that submittal to keep with that 26 lots. We put single-family attached lots there, brought the detention cell on the south side of Peregrine Road, more where the natural occurring drainage is on that south side. So again, sticking with those 26 lots. And then the current submittal before you this afternoon is for 28 lots. Primarily, this whole thing has stayed the same. Instead of providing on-site detention, we have worked with the neighboring owner to the east, where there's an existing detention cell that has excess capacity. We've worked with 8801 as well as their engineer Olson's. They've reviewed our drainage study. They're acceptable, and our client is working with them on the specifics on how the maintenance is going to work with that. Verbally, we have approval to take the water from our development through the church's property. We have shown, you can kind of just see it here a little bit, a 30-foot easement on the church's property. They've been agreeable to this. We will be getting something, as Tim mentioned and George, fully executed prior to the formal approved plan. But we have been working with the church as well as 8801 for that. So I showed these just to kind of show the primary basis of the CUP, the 26 or 28 lots. It has, for the most part, been the same. It's just been a matter of where does the detention go. That has been the reason for the deferral. We have that figured out. I believe Watershed is on board. Some minor comments as well as those executed agreements. The neighboring property owner is on board. That's been reviewed by their engineer as well. So from previous people that have come to speak, no one's really been opposed to it. They've been neutral and just said, we have drainage concerns and we have concerns about South 88th Street connectivity. We heard from George, South 88th Street that's going to be connected. That's not really a REGA or our developer issue. That's a city question. And then regarding drainage, so we are significantly reducing the amount of drainage headed to the south. So currently there's 3.73 acres that are flowing south to Sunrise Estates. And with our proposed plan, we're reducing that to 1.61 acres. So that significantly reduces the amount of runoff to the neighbors to the south. For the 2-year storm, it's a 30% reduction. The 10-year storm event, it's a 45% reduction. And for the 100-year storm event, it's a 55% reduction. So I think the concern of drainage to the south with taking ours to the north has been resolved. South 88th Street, that's been discussed by the city staff. So with that, I would open up for any questions.
I'll just mention that there was one concern about potential effects of drainage to the northwest.
Okay. Yeah,
which I believe is the development that has. There's a development right there to the northwest. Sure. Yep.
Yeah. So currently, actually, that flows into the site.
Okay.
There's a pretty decent. There's probably about 8 feet of fall from west to east, and so we're showing that would come down and then flow to the north, and there's an existing detention cell kind of right in the church's property, so none of that water will be going to the west.
In that direction,
yeah.
Right. If anything, it's decreasing the amount
right.
that they're receiving now
yep.
as well. Okay. Thank you. Other questions for Nate? Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there testimony in support of this application? Testimony in support? Is there any neutral testimony or testimony in opposition?
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, Rodenberg.
I would actually love to have a couple of staff questions.
Okay.
So before we close the public hearing, yeah. I think we, have avoided this conversation for a little while, but we do need to talk a little bit more about North 88th. Most of the letters that we received, although there were previous questions about drainage, I feel like those concerns with the current layout have been mitigated appropriately, and we appreciate that. But I'm still not sure I understand the Planning Commission's position on North 88th, and I would like a little bit more clarity on that.
Sure. So the North 88th Street.
Just a second, George.
Or sorry.
There you go.
There you
So
go.
North 88th Street right-of-way presently exists in Sunrise Estates to the south. That abuts or comes up right to the south property line of the development site in question. And as another point of fact, there is right-of-way for Peregrine Court to the west, which also comes up to the property. And so the requirement for the North 88th Street connection is similar to the one for Peregrine. They're to be aligned. It's in the subdivision ordinance to have alignment and connection of those streets where they're already established, such that they project into the development area. And as I mentioned, having a connection to Sunrise Estates, the acreage development is not unprecedented. This is actually one of the last remaining connection points. There were connections made for Waterford Estates, and then 2 connections made from Sunrise Estates to the 8801, which again, that had over 700 units approved, 728 dwelling units, including apartments. So there's nothing exceptional. It's a requirement.
And really, Peregrine Road will pass east to west all the way across the property and connect to both will connect both with the developments on either side. Is that correct?
Correct. The general intent of all these connections is for the traffic to be dispersed as opposed to be channeled down one specific corridor.
So the connection on 88th, because currently it's a cul-de-sac with no sidewalks, but the property owners won't need to do any street widening or sidewalk development, right? It'll just be, they'll just cut through to connect 88th with the townhouses.
Correct. The right-of-way exists. There is a requirement that the developer will be responsible for the extension of North 88th Street pavement to the existing pavement in Sunrise Estates and the removal of the temporary cul-de-sac. But those homeowners in Sunrise Estates are not obligated to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand the concerns of the Sunrise Estates folks with regard to the increase in traffic on roads that don't have sidewalks, and you know, where they have had a period of time in which they're, you know, used to being protected from that additional traffic flow, and can certainly understand that raises some concerns with this development. But certainly understand the city's position as well. Any other questions for George? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Applicant rebuttal at this point? Anything you want to add to what's been shared? Okay. Dick?
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Excellent.
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
I would move that we approve change of zone 22013.
Second, Rodenberg.
Discussion.
It's filling in making a connection to what's already existing, and so I think it's a logical project.
Yeah, we've received at least one letter in opposition to taking 88th Street through, and it's heartfelt, but I think it has to be done.
Well, and I was going to bring that up under the special permit. I have great empathy with the family and their daughter and opening that street up, but I don't anticipate that much traffic going through that way. It's the connections actually go along Peregrine much easier, so I would anticipate more traffic going to Peregrine and then going out. But the being one that has lived in the county and then had roads developed all around us, yes, it does change traffic, and it changes traffic patterns. But the city's basic rule is to make a connection wherever possible to disperse the traffic as much as possible. So unfortunately, I think it should be connected.
Yeah, and I'll just continue. I think that we should discuss both of these together, and then we can have the vote on both of these separately. So any other discussion on either the change of zone or the special permit?
I appreciate all the work on the drainage revisions. I mean, that was significant engineering work to make those adjustments, and I appreciate it. I know it's been a long time process, but I appreciate the work on that.
Yeah. Anything else? I agree that I think that this is a great project. I appreciate the adjoining landowners working to help make this come to fruition, make it a reality so that it can work and have appropriate protection of the properties that's around it. And I agree that connectivity is important. and am hopeful that we'll be able to make this work for the surrounding community. Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved, 5-0.
And I would move to approve special permit 22015.
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved, 5-0.
Okay, at this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Rodenberg.
Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.